Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first installment of the Historical Romance Virtual Reading Series. I'm Catherine Grant. I'm joined here by Holly Bush, Erica Ridley, Tabetha Waite, and we are all authors who are going to be at Romancing the Gold Coast this October in New York. And we were also excited about this conference happening that we couldn't wait. And so we're doing this reading series to get to know you, to show you a little bit about us, and to tell you about the conference so that we can all get even more excited for October. A little bit more about Romancing the Gold Coast. I'll tell you a lot more towards the end of the evening, but just a gist, it's a weekend retreat for historical romance lovers to feel like you have stepped back into Regency and Victorian times and really celebrate the parts of the genre that we really love while meeting your favorite authors. Tonight, we are going to do a series of readings. So we're going to be hearing from all these lovely ladies. And after each reading, each author will take questions. So feel free to type in your questions in the comments section at any point. If it's specific to an author, maybe you could tell me that it's for a specific person. Otherwise, if it's general, I might ask it of everybody. And we're looking forward to getting your questions. We'll also have some raffle prizes lined up. So stick around. That's going to be a random draw, and we'll tell you about the raffle prizes as they come up. So that's what to expect for tonight. Our first reader is Holly Bush. So Holly is a historical romance author. She writes in the U.S. in the late 1800s, Victorian England, and also women's fiction. And her writing has been described as emotional, heartfelt, and sexy romance. So Holly, we're very excited to have you.
Thank you. Hello. It was a great introduction. Thank you. I'm Holly Bush. I do write U.S.-based historical romance. I am very excited about this fall's event with Kim at Romancing the Gold Coast. Please, we'd love to have you join us. This is going to be such a great group of authors. I can't wait to meet everyone that will be there. And I really want to thank Catherine, who has put this together so I didn't have to think too hard about how to do this, which is good. I'm going to be reading tonight from the second book in a new series called The Thompsons of Locust Street. The second book is called The Bare Knuckle Groom. The series is about 5 siblings who come from Scotland into Philadelphia with a great aunt and their parents. The parents die on the way to the U.S. So the stories are the adult children. The first story was The Bachelor's Bride, and we meet the middle daughter, Elspeth, meets and marries a fellow that's high society in Philadelphia. And therefore, her siblings are thrown into meeting those sorts of folks. So James Thompson, our bare knuckle groom, he's a championship boxer, and he's a hot-blooded kind of a fellow. He meets Lucinda Vermeil, who is the daughter of a wealthy international type business person, and she is cool. I describe the book as a cocky boxer meets an ice queen. And that seems, I think, to tell it correctly. In the part I'm going to read tonight, the first time that they meet, James says a few things to a group of people about he has just danced with Lucinda, and he says a few things about it. And I believe it's misinterpreted or through some gossip. It gets back to Lucinda's father, and not exactly how it was when he said it, which is what happens with gossip. But she's angry because he said it, and she's angry because her father gave her a hard time about it. So she plans at the next event that she's going to be at, she plans to talk to him privately. So that's where we're going to start. James walked past the open door to the music room where someone was playing the piano and several were singing with the tune. There were a few men in the library he passed, talking softly and seriously about some pressing government matter, no doubt. He continued down the hallway and turned right, as his instructions had said, down a quiet and dimly lit corridor to the next to last door. He looked right and left, straightened his tie, and ran a hand over his hair before turning the knob and letting himself into the room. It seemed deserted at first glance, a sitting room for the lady of the house, most likely. He turned when he realized there was someone else in the room. It was not whom he had expected. Lucinda Vermeil slid into view from the shadows and leaned back against the closed door. Miss Vermeil, this is undoubtedly a situation neither of us would like to be caught in, he said. Excuse me, I'm meeting someone and must have the wrong room. My apologies for disturbing you. No, Mr. Thompson, you do not have the wrong room. Mrs. DeLuca will not be joining you. James narrowed his eyes and walked toward her. To her credit, she did not flinch or in any way alter her expression of disdain and perhaps anger. What in the world could she have to be angry about? What is this about, Miss Vermeil? I do not appreciate deceptions. She stared at him, the only hint of emotion, the slight widening of her nostrils, as if she was preparing herself to face a foe. Please step aside, he said with less courtesy. I will not, she replied. Then it will be a long evening without refreshments or friends. I will climb out the damn window, if necessary, before your chaperone comes charging in to save you from my evil wiles, and you both disparage my name. He turned and strode toward the window, fully intending to somehow escape the room and his captor, even if he had to shimmy down a tree to do so. His hand was on the sash to lift it when she spoke. Disparage your name? You pompous ass. Telling those men what you did about me and making my life uncomfortable for the sole purpose of your pleasure in bragging? He turned to her. What are you talking about? At the Pendergast ball 3 weeks ago, what you said had come back to my papa by the next morning. I really have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't say anything to any... His words trailed away from her, as did his eyes. You do know what I'm talking about. I can see it in your face, you villain. James shook his head. It was nothing. I said nothing that was disrespectful or would have belittled you. That can't be true. My papa tells me that can't be true, and he has a well-developed web of friends who says it is true. There's a young lady I was trying to discourage without insulting her. I had just danced with you, and the men in her crowd were asking about you. And I said you had enjoyed our dance. That's all. But you were trying to discourage another young lady, so you must have implied something more. And it was said you implied that you won my affections. James shook his head. It was not much of a remark. Maybe the gossips changed some of the details. I don't know. But it was never meant to be a claim on you. You don't understand my papa and his expectations, she said and looked away, giving him a view of the long length of her very pale neck. That was when it dawned on him what her father's real objections were. He walked closer to her, the subtle scent of roses reaching his nose, and she turned her head back to face him as he approached, those limpid blue eyes focused on him. She arched one brow as he stepped within a few inches of her. I think I know the reason your daddy was upset, he said softly, and ran one finger from her cheek to her chin. She gazed up at him coolly. The only evidence of any nervousness or fear was the pulse fluttering at the base of her neck. He wasn't upset you danced with a man you'd been introduced to. He was upset that it was me, a Scotsman, a boxer, and an uncouth ruffian. She took an impatient breath. Of course that upset him, but your comments afterwards made him furious. You mean the comment I supposedly made? He whispered and laid his palm on her cheek, his thumb a hair's breadth from the corner of that remarkable mouth of hers, those wide, soft lips that he dreamt about. He leaned his head closer yet, staring at her mouth. The comment that you were mine, and others should stay away from the woman that James Thompson had claimed. Her shoulders and breast rose and fell with her sharp breath. Yes, she whispered, yes. He did not know what she was agreeing to, but she didn't move to stop him when he closed the distance between them. He touched her lips lightly with his own, the contact sending a sharp pulse to his groin. He moved his hand to palm her cheek. tilting her face just a bit and controlling what he thought was undoubtedly her first kiss. He ran his tongue across her lips, opening his mouth slowly as she opened hers. She shivered, her eyes closing in a languorous wafting of lashes. He touched his tongue to hers and felt her sharp intake of breath. He swept his tongue around the edge of her mouth and then deeper as he stepped closer to her, bringing her breast against his chest and her lower stomach in contact with his cock, hard and ready. She was a captivating mix of innocence and burning sexuality. And then she touched her tongue to the chip on his front tooth, a reminder to keep his hands up in the ring. And he jerked his hips towards her, pinning her to the door and letting loose a deep growl. Her hands trailed up to his chest and he caught both wrists, as slender and fragile as he'd imagined, in his free hand, slowly raising them until her arms were above her head against the door behind her. Her breasts were pressed against his chest tightly as he plundered her willing mouth. It was the most erotic thing that had ever happened to him. He stepped away from her, letting her wrists go, her arms falling slowly to her sides. She was staring at him, both of them breathing hard. She touched her mouth with shaking fingers. She must have felt it as much as he thought, that sense that certain things had irrevocably changed. And then she glanced down his body until her eyes landed where his trousers tented. She raised her gaze and lifted one pale brow. He had another worldly feeling that the earth under his feet had shifted, that whatever he thought his future may or may not be had been tossed to the sky to land at her feet. The voices in the hallway drew him from his mental ramblings, focusing again on what may happen if they were caught together, especially as she looked as if she'd just been thoroughly kissed, and he had a raging cock stand that would be difficult to hide. He reached past her and slowly turned the lock on the door. They both stared at the knob as the voices drew closer.
Woo! I want to know what happens next.
I hope.
Wow, that was a great excerpt to start us off with. I'm putting Holly's website here in case anyone wants to go pre-order. When does that come out?
That is out.
Oh, it's out.
It came out at the end of March.
Okay,
So
great.
it's just been out a couple months. And that's the second book in this series.
So head over to her website, get the first book, get the second book, find out what happens next. So now we're going to do some Q&A. And so feel free to add your comments into the live stream. I would love to know, Holly, whether your stories, like, do you get the ideas for the characters or the setting first?
Well, I mean, I don't, I'm not a writer that, I don't generally plan. I usually see a person doing something, and that lends me to something. The Bachelor's Bride, there was a scene, the opening scene is Elspeth Thompson, and she's eavesdropping on her brother James and her older sister Muriel. And, that's the scene I saw of them. And then it kind of lays itself out. James began to be a real person early on in that book, as did the rest of her sisters and brothers. So it wasn't hard for me once I met the family, once the family was in my head, then to see where the conflict was going to go. And he was a boxer, so that was kind of an easy thing. And he's kind of hot-tempered the whole way through The Bachelor's Bride, so it was easy to pair him with someone who is not hot-tempered. So I'm writing the third book right now. I don't have a title, but I'm hoping it comes out in the fall. And it is about the youngest sister, Kirsty, and she meets a professor, which is the perfect foil for her.
Got it. And one question is, do you link characters together as you're planning stories? Do you have storylines planned out in advance?
No. I wish I did sometimes. Generally I have an overarching feeling of how the story is going to peak and, what are my conclusions going to be? How will I wrap that up? I have a general idea about the series, where the series is heading. I have a good idea who I want to, in the book that follows, will be the oldest sister. I have a good idea who she will meet now, but I don't know what the conflict will be. So no, I wish I was the kind of person that could. I wish I was the kind of person that could plan those kind of things. I do have a storyboard because as I figure things out, I write them down so I don't forget. But I don't plan probably the way I should.
Well, it's the part of the magic of writing is letting the process come to you.
I mean, for me it is. I know that there are others that really, lay out their storylines and their series, and I do. I understand that it's not how my brain works.
Yeah. And thinking of the conference, what are you most looking forward to about returning to conferences and going to a retreat like Romancing the Gold Coast in specific?
Well, there's always authors to me because I'm a reader as well as a writer. But I really enjoy interacting with readers. I really enjoy it. And this is a really beautiful setting. It looks like Kim has given us plenty of downtime so that we can sit in the lobby and talk about books. We do some, I do a Lady Jane's salon here in Lancaster County, PA, and we only do it 4 times a year, but it really is one of my favorite things to do because, I mean, it's a Sunday afternoon and we just talk about books. I mean, it's wonderful to meet some authors. So in that respect, that's what I have missed the most is, meeting up with those folks and, just taking some time to talk about books.
Yeah. It's amazing how in-person connections, as much as we can connect virtually, once you have that physical chemistry of actually being in the room of someone, it totally changes everything.
It does. I have a couple people I met very, very early on. Kim is one of them that really helped my writing career very much and still are, anticipate when my books come out and look forward to that and are willing to share it. I've made some terrific friends. So I'm very lucky.
Yeah, that's great. And another question from the audience, do you plan to have any stories with Indigenous people since you write in the U.S.?
I generally don't. I don't. And for this reason, most historical romance set in the U.S., not most, but a lot of it is set in a Western setting, the Midwest West, Texas and the West, and the gold rush and cattle and Indians and Indigenous people. And that's a whole subgenre. And that's just never been where my creativity went. I usually generally write about the East Coast. There was an awful lot happening. I find that time period, 1870 to turn of century, just unbelievable from telegraphs to telephones to cameras to, the mail system to the sewing machine. Sewing machine drastically changed how women's lives were. We went from, I read just not too long ago that the typical woman spent, woman that was married with children, spent some, 25 or 30 hours a week sewing clothes. I mean, that's what you had to do. If you had growing children, they were going to be growing out of them and that kind of thing. The sewing machine changed that. Singer and the ones prior to that, they really changed that. So there's plenty for me in urban settings. Joanna Shoup writes a lot of urban settings in the U.S. She's a little bit later than me. She's the Gilded Age, which is closer to the turn of the century. There's a few of us that write that time period, but or that area, but I just typically don't write Westerns type historicals.
Got it. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So I think that brings us to all the questions. So
Okay.
Thank you so much again, Holly, for
you're very welcome.
Yeah, and so we can move to hear from Erica now. So let me press the right buttons. Welcome, Erica. For those of you who are new to Erica, she is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author. Her romances are witty, feel-good, and historical. She also has a really great newsletter that I subscribe to, and we have not met before tonight, really, but I already feel like I know Erica very personally because of her newsletter. So hopefully that was your goal, to get some stalkers. And we're so excited to have you tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here, and I am delighted to return to a post-pandemic world where we get to hang out again. I can't wait to meet readers and hang out with other authors and have so much fun with you guys on Romancing the Gold Coast. I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm going to try to share my screen here for a second. Let me see if I can do this. Share screen. Sorry. It is taking a second.
No problem. These buttons always take it's always a few more clicks than I expect.
Oh, this is hilarious. It says Chrome can't share my screen unless I quit and restart it.
Oh no.
Can that be true? If I do that, will I come right back here?
We can find out. We might lose
you. We're gonna do the experiment.
You back.
Okay, we're gonna try.
While we wait, a little bit more about Erica is she lives in Costa Rica, and her website has a section that is FAQs about her, fun facts about her that have nothing to do with writing, and also there's a whole section that's dedicated to bad jokes, which I always find fun to read through. You made it back.
I made it back. Let's see if it works now. Pick a window. Here we go.
There we go.
All right. So, although I am now known primarily for historical romance, some of the first books I wrote were fun, fast-paced romantic comedies. Courtney Milan called Must Love Magic ridiculously awesome. If you like to laugh and enjoy silly fun and sexy times, check out the Magic and Mayhem trio. Like almost all my books, they're available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. The next series couldn't be more different. Gothic historical romance full of castles and dangerous men. Eloisa James called it sensual and witty, a delicious dark Gothic treat. You can grab the first book, Too Wicked to Kiss, for free as an ebook. The Dukes of War was my breakout series, and possibly how most readers first heard of me. In The Dukes of War, roguish peers and dashing war heroes return from battle only to be thrust into the splendor and madness of Regency England. The Duke's Accidental Wife was a top 10 New York Times bestseller, and the first ebook, The Viscount's Tempting Minx, has had over 500,000 downloads. You can grab it for free. In the Rogues to Riches series, Cinderella stories aren't just for princesses. You can also grab the first ebook, Lord of Chance, for free. When Lady Luck wins a charming rake in a game of chance, and then a wee mishap has them legs shackled by dawn, Had the tables finally turned in this gambler's favor? The newest book in this series, Lord of the Masquerade, features the fan favorite Duke of Lamley and is a fun, fast-paced interracial romance full of banter, scandal, and devastating secrets. It releases on Friday, August 6th. So if you're interested, you can grab that as a pre-order right now. The 12 Dukes of Christmas are heartwarming Regency romps nestled in a picturesque snow-covered village. After all, nothing heats up a winter's night quite like finding oneself in the arms of a duke. Audiobooks are currently in progress. I am so excited. There's a company that is putting the audiobooks together. I have not heard any of it yet, but I have so much anticipation. I can't wait to hear it. I am sure it's going to be amazing. And as soon as I have more information, I will be sharing with my VIP list and the world. But the VIP list always gets information first. You can grab the first ebook in the 12 Dukes of Christmas series, Once Upon a Duke, for free. My newest series, The Wild Winchesters, features a fun-loving, caper-committing family of tight-knit siblings who don't let laws stop them from righting wrongs. They're like Regency superheroes. If you've seen the show Leverage, you have the idea. Readers have also told me that the strong found family vibes remind them of the Umbrella Academy. You can meet the Winchesters in the series prequel called The Governess Gambit for free. The Perks of Loving a Wallflower releases in October and will be an audiobook, ebook, and paperback wherever books are sold. If you missed one of the freebies I mentioned, or just want even more freebies and insider info, you can join the VIP list at ridley.vip or on my website at ericaridley.com. The Duke Heist is a new release. This book was so much fun to write. I love this family, and I had a blast writing this book. Why seduce a duke the normal way when you can accidentally kidnap one in an elaborately planned heist? The ebook is a Kindle deal this week only in the US and Canada. So instead of $8, it's only $2.99. If you or someone you know might be interested, feel free to spread the word. I'll also give away a signed copy of The Duke Heist as a live raffle prize after the Q&A. But first, I will read an excerpt. So let me stop sharing. Okay. So now I'm reading an excerpt from The Duke Heist. Chloe folded her hands in her lap and did her best not to glare a hole right through the handsome, haughty Duke of Faircliff. His frigid blue gaze had looked right at her and slid away just as quickly, having glimpsed nothing to attract his interest. How many times had she and Faircliff been in the same room? 8? 10? Every disdainful glance in her direction as indifferent as the last. She lifted her chin. Her father had taught her that to the right person, she would be visible and memorable. Faircliff was clearly the wrong person. Not that she wanted him to notice her, Chloe reminded herself. The continued success of Jane Brown hinged on her uncanny ability to be wholly unremarkable under any circumstances. She gripped the soft muslin of her skirt and took in all the other ladies in the parlor. Mrs. York clapped her hands together. And now, a celebratory tea! The Duke's face took on a comical look of alarm. I don't think. You must join us. Mrs. York's hands flapped like frightened birds. The girls were about to have oatcakes and cucumber sandwiches before you arrived. We were about to discuss epistolary structure in 18th century French novels, Philippa murmured. I never meant to interrupt, Faircliff said with haste. I mustn't stay, and in fact, nonsense, come, all of you. Mrs. York waved her arms about the room, driving her guests into the dining room like a shepherd herding sheep. Chloe and Faircliff were both caught in the flow. Once they reached the door, however, Chloe stepped to one side. She could not take a seat at the table, or she would be stuck there for the next hour. While everyone else was occupied, this was her chance to liberate the painting. But first, she needed an excuse to disappear. An adorable, furry reason. She released Tiglet from the large wicker basket. The calico kitten darted between boots and beneath petticoats with a formidable roar. Mrs. York gave a dramatic shriek in response. Tiglet scaled several curtains in search of an open window before darting out of the dining room and flying off down the corridor as though his tail were afire. Chloe gasped as if shocked that her homing kitten was attempting to dash home. How embarrassing! I'll run and find the naughty little scamp at once. Go on ahead. Please don't wait for me. With her basket hanging from her arm, she ducked into the parlor and closed the door behind her. She hurried to lift the painting from the wall and carried it behind a chinoiserie folding screen in the corner. Up came the frame's grips, off came the backing, out came Bean's painting. She rolled it carefully and tucked it into the basket before stretching the forgery she'd brought over the wooden frame. She ran to open the parlor door before anyone noticed it had been shut, and then hurried past the dining room to the front door without taking her leave from the guests. Would anyone notice she'd failed to return? Doubtful. If anything, the ladies would assume Jane Brown had slunk off in mortification. Still, there was no time to waste. Any caper's success depended upon a timely exit. Keeping her head down, she headed out the front walk toward the first carriage in the queue. Only when she glimpsed the red curtains and her brother's leather gloves on the box did she lift her head toward the driver's perch. It was empty. Her lungs caught. Where was Graham? Distant shouts reached her ears, and her tight muscles relaxed. Something unexpected must have occurred, and her siblings' distraction was underway. This was her cue to flee. Chloe pushed the basket inside, unhooked the carriage from its post, and leapt onto the coachman's seat. Female drivers weren't unheard of, but all the same, she was glad she never went outside without garbing herself in the plainest, dullest, dowdiest clothes in her wardrobe. No one who glanced her way would bother looking for long. She set the horses on a swift path out of Mayfair. Only when Grosvenor Square was no longer visible behind her did she allow herself a small smile of victory. "Did we escape?" came a low velvet voice from within the carriage. Chloe's skin went cold. Who was that? Graham wouldn't be hiding in the back of their carriage. A stranger was in the coach. She twisted about and wrenched the privacy curtain to one side. A handsome visage with soft brown hair and sculpted cheekbones stared back at her, glacial blue eyes wide with surprise. "Fairclough?" she blurted in disbelief. "Miss, you?" he sputtered when he found his voice. "What the devil are you doing driving my carriage?"
Well, what is she doing?
Just about to find out. She's abducting a duke on accident, as one does.
That's so fun. I can't wait to read that. All right, we're going to move into Q&A again, and then we will do the raffle prize. So be sure to get your questions in. I'm going to put this banner up. If you haven't already signed up for the VIP list, like I said, Erica's newsletter is fantastic. So go to ericaridley.com. There are a couple of things that I have learned from her newsletter. Would you care to tell us a little bit about your wedding?
Oh, sure. I had a Regency-themed wedding. It was so much fun. My mother-in-law is a seamstress, so she made my Regency gown just completely from scratch to measure and everything, just as though she were my personal modiste, and also outfitted my husband in his rake gear, so he looked very dapper and fine for our wedding, which was at the National Theater in San Jose, Costa Rica, which is a beautiful, beautiful building created in the 1800s. So it was just the perfect venue to have a Regency-themed wedding. And one of the funniest things was that while we were inside the theater, we got a lot of interested looks, but no one asked any questions, as though it was perfectly normal for a Regency couple to be strolling along inside the theater.
That's awesome. Someone's asking, do you offer your books on Amazon Prime?
Amazon will occasionally promote a book in that way, but it is not something I have control over, kind of like the deal that the Duke Heist was chosen by Amazon for this week as their special, but that's not something I can influence, unfortunately. So yes, if it comes up, that's great, and I will definitely let social media and my VIP list know, but it's not something that I know in advance.
Got it, yeah. I love that you broke down all your series because it's so helpful for someone because you are so prolific, to be like, where to start? And you have so many different flavors. What are you currently working on?
Ooh, so I am currently working on the third book in the Wild Winchester series. It is called Nobody's Princess. And I don't have final cover copy yet, but I will tell you what I have. It's stars Graham, who we have just learned was not in the carriage he was supposed to be in the Duke Heist. So Kunigunde de Hoysch must renounce her luxurious position as companion to the Balkovian princess in order to honor her family's regal legacy as the first female royal guard. But to do so, she must best the king's top men on a mission in England in under 40 days. There's no time for kissing handsome strangers or for falling in love. Graham Winchester dreams of rescuing a princess. Kunigunde is practically royalty. She was born in a castle, but she doesn't want to be saved. When she joins forces with the Winchesters to fight an injustice, Graham loves having her at his side, and in his bed, and in his heart. But her fairy tale ends in a land far away from everything he holds dear.
That sounds exciting. And that is not the book that launches in October. This is the one that comes after that?
Correct, yeah. So the book that launches in October is The Perks of Loving a Wallflower, which I can also tell you a little bit more about that. So as a master of disguise, Tommy Winchester can be a proper young lady or a bawdy old man, anything to solve the case. Her latest assignment unveils a top-secret military cipher, covering up an enigma that goes back centuries. But when Tommy's beautiful new client turns out to be the highborn lady she's secretly smitten with, more than the mission is at stake. Blue-stocking Miss Philippa York doesn't believe in love. Her cold heart didn't pitter-patter when she was betrothed to a duke, nor did it break when he married someone else. All Philippa desires is to rescue her priceless manuscript and decode its clues to defeat a powerful enemy. She hates that she needs a man's help, and she's delighted to discover the clever, charming Baron at her side is in fact a woman. Her cold heart, did it just pitter-patter?
That's a great blurb.
Thank you.
Okay, so Megan's asking, are there many opportunities for Regency-themed events?
In terms of reader events, the ones I know about off the top of my head would be Romancing the Gold Coast or the Historical Romance Retreat on the two coasts in the US. I don't know, I mean, there may be more, but I don't know of any others on a big kind of like whole weekend level.
Yeah, those are the ones I know of as well. And Kristen's asking, she says she's so happy that many of your books are on audiobook. Do you get to choose your narrators?
So it depends. If my publisher is producing the audiobook, not really, although they will work with me. So they will kind of pick a short list of narrators and I can kind of opine who of those would I prefer. So like with the Duke Heist, I was kind of able to pick the person that I thought would do the best job. So if you listen to that audiobook, I hope you loved it. And if you didn't, sorry, that was my fault. But I think she did a great job, actually. She does voices for TV and cartoons and things like that. So I thought, and she's a comedian in her day job life. So I thought she was phenomenal. If I'm producing the audiobook, then absolutely, then everything's completely on me and I choose the narrators myself. And if it's a situation where another company has purchased the sub rights from me, then I don't have control over anything. So it just really depends what the situation is.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And someone's asking, did you speak Regency vows at your wedding?
You know, I thought about that, but those were, the traditional ones are going to be from the Church of England. That's what was recognized at the time. And we're in Costa Rica with having a Costa Rican wedding with my Costa Rican husband, and it didn't seem appropriate. So we did not do Regency vows.
Awesome. Well, let's raffle off. You said you have a signed copy of the Duke Heist.
I do. Yes.
That's super exciting. So I'm going to generate a random number. And
do we want to say first, anybody who's watching that didn't ask a question, should they put a little comment in if they'd like to win? Or do
I'm
you
doing
have
it off of a spreadsheet, so I can't grab that. But they can feel free to continue asking questions. So the winner is, I'm probably not pronouncing this name correctly, Egle Valikoniene. So congratulations, Egle. And I'll follow up after the event to make sure that you get your prize. So thank you so much. And thank you, Erica, for donating the raffle prize.
Thanks for hosting.
All right. So if you want to see more of Erica, join us in October at Romancing the Gold Coast, or be sure to follow her VIP list and you'll hear about all the amazing events that she does. So thank you, Erica. And now I get to introduce Tabetha Waite. So let me make sure I click the correct buttons as I do so. So Tabetha is a multi-award winning author of historical romance. Hi, Tabetha. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Catherine.
And Tabetha, you're based out of the Midwest. You grew up in Missouri, and you're a Midwest girl. And you're currently, you finished your Ways of Love series. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have about 26 books out now, probably.
That's a lot.
So, yeah, a lot of people are, they're like, oh, wow, you have that many? We didn't even know you were like an author. So it's like, I'm new to a lot of people, and I'm like, it's okay. I just go with it. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So I'll let you take it away if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then jump into the reading.
Okay, yeah. Well, I am really excited to go to Romancing the Gold Coast because this will be my first time in New York. So I'm planning all kinds of stuff. I want to go see the Statue of Liberty, take a carriage ride through Central Park, all the touristy things. So you will be able to spot me really easy. I even bought a friend shirt that's got the New York skyline. I'm like, I'm totally going to take a picture in Times Square with that. So I'm like, so excited. And it'll be my first time meeting Kim. So I'm looking forward to that too. I'm going to be fangirling right along with a lot of the readers that are there, because there's so many great authors that are going to show up. And, I've wanted to write since I was 4. No, not since I was 4. In the 4th grade. Okay. Since I was 9. There we go. Since I was 9 in the 4th grade. And it took me about 30 years to do that. So, but that was okay. And, before I became an author, I was a reader first, and I'm still a reader. So I still get all the excitement from going to different events like that. I love to play dress up, I saw some of the pictures of Erica's Regency wedding, and I thought it was so cool. My husband and I actually renewed our 20-year wedding vows in Vegas. We were Beauty and the Beast, and a lot of people saw that on Facebook, and because I'm just that big of a nerd. So, but I've loved romance forever. If you see behind me over there, I'm kind of turned around. I've got lots of like silhouette pictures, because anything to do with like the romance, the balls, the carriages. I love it. I can't get enough of it. And Regency is my first love, pun intended. But I do write some Victorian. I even had paranormal out, a fantasy story. Let's see. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a hybrid author. I had a couple small press publishers, but I love being indie because I can just say, okay, this is the cover I want, and all that kind of thing. So, but the first book I'll be raffling off a signed copy plus this cool little, it's a fan, it's a book spine. I thought that was so cool. But anyway, so the first book, as Catherine mentioned, my Ways of Love series, and Why the Earl is After the Girl was the first book that was released in that series. It came out July of 2016, so 5 years ago, if I'm doing the math right. So I have to tell you before I do my reading here, the very first sentence in chapter 1 says, "What do you mean it's all gone?" Okay. So a lot of my inspiration for my stories comes from just life, or every time I meet someone, I'm like, oh, well, how did you, they're a couple, I'm like, how did you meet? I love to hear everybody's, romance story themselves. And sometimes I draw from that, or sometimes something will just pop in my head in the middle of the night and I have to get up and write it down, that kind of thing. But as far as that goes, my laptop that I used to have crashed and I lost a lot of work. And was my reaction was, what do you mean it's all gone? And I thought, what would an heiress think? If she's thinking, okay, I've got some money coming to me that I can live with my life, and then find out there's nothing there. Athena Hawthorne in my story is a commoner. Her father owned a jewelry store, which, he was very renowned. He made jewelry for the, and for someone that types, I can't think of words. I'm terrible at live. Sometimes I'll ramble, so I'm sorry. I'm so good behind a computer. But anyway, monarchy, there you go. So he has made jewelry for the monarchy. But anyway, he passes away, and that's when she finds out. She talks to his solicitor and finds out that it's gone. So at the same time, then we have our hero, Ryan Ashcroft, and he thinks that she is in possession of a family heirloom called the Couleur Magnifique. It's like this rare color-changing sapphire. The last time it was seen, her father was supposed to put it in a new setting, and it's disappeared. So he imagines, okay, she's got it. She's going to basically skip town, and put it in modern terms. And so anyway, so it kind of... So we try to ferret stuff out. She decides that she's going to have a secret identity just so she thinks somebody else in the ton is responsible. So she goes to this ball with one of her friends. And so Ryan, he's thinking, okay, he's got the upper hand and everything. And he thinks, okay, well, I'm going to go. He set Athena up, since Athena was destitute, he set her up as governess to his sister's kids. So he goes over to his sister's house thinking that Athena's going to be there. So I'm going to have two little scenes here. It's whenever he finds out Athena's not there, and then when he finds out she's at the ball with his friend. So, all right. Ryan's step was light as he made his way up the steps to Amber House that evening. He was glad he decided to talk with Eversley that afternoon, for it had finally done the trick to snap him out of his current slump. Recharged for battle, he was ready to face Athena once more. After all, nothing would be settled if he didn't make every attempt to flesh out her secrets. He just had to remind himself to keep his hands and mouth where they belonged. Walking casually into the front parlor where his sister and Gregory sat enjoying a round of piquet, he found himself looking around for Athena before feeling a surge of disappointment when she didn't appear. "It seems rather quiet tonight," he noted, to which he was ignored. With a frown, he walked over to a large globe in a corner of the room. Giving it a haphazard spin, he tried to keep his tone neutral when he asked, "Has Athena already retired?" Cassie didn't even look up, but merely kept playing. "No." You know how aggravating sisters can be. More was obviously not forthcoming, so he turned to his sister and put his hands on his hips. "Is she with the twins?" "No." This time, the obscure reply came from Gregory. Ryan instantly froze. Something wasn't right here. Then where is she? "Out." Cassie shrugged as she laid down another card. He blinked, not sure that he'd heard correctly. "Do you mean she's gone?" "That's what out usually means, yes." His sister rolled her eyes at Gregory, as though she was worried about the welfare of Ryan's mind. It was the last straw. "Does someone want to tell me what the hell is going on?" Gregory finally glanced up, his green eyes full of censure. "Friend or brother, I will thank you not to use that sort of language around my wife." "Then can we quit dancing around the subject of Athena?" Ryan shot back irritably. "Athena, is it?" Cassie said almost silkily, as she finally laid down her hand and turned to face him fully. When Ryan didn't reply but merely kept his expression mutinous, she lifted her chin and said in the most casual manner imaginable, "She's at a masquerade ball with Lord Eversley." Athena was with Rourke? Wait. Holding up a hand, he asked firmly, "How does she even know him?" "The Viscount paid a call on us this afternoon," Gregory replied, his full attention on the exchange now. "To see Athena?" Ryan asked, doubly confused. Again, Cassie rolled her eyes, and damned if she wasn't pregnant or even blood relation, he would have called her out at that moment, regardless of the fact she was a woman. "No, he came to see Gregory and myself, but after meeting Athena, he thought she would be the perfect choice to take to the ball. So I helped her choose one of my gowns." "You mean you were party to this debacle?" Ryan groaned in disbelief. Surely he was dreaming, and he was only imagining this entire nightmare. "I didn't see where it hurt that she had a night to herself," Cassie shrugged. "She is a young woman of age, after all, and she has been working quite hard." Ryan felt a tick begin in his jaw. Who, pray tell, was her chaperone? "Oh, good heavens, she just went out with Eversley," Cassie replied, as if it was perfectly commonplace to allow a single governess to go about London in the middle of a night with a known rogue. Ryan didn't even think. Before Cassie had even caught up to him, he had already stalked back into the foyer and was shrugging on his greatcoat. "Where are you going?" she demanded, half breathless. He paused at the door, only to look over his shoulder at her, with eyes full of righteous anger. "To bring Athena back here. If you don't readily recall, let me remind you. Athena is a commoner. She'll be torn to shreds by the dragons of society if they learn who she really is." He paused, then muttered, "Wait until I get my hands on that bastard." As he stepped across the threshold into the night, Ryan thought he heard Gregory say, "I hope Rourke knows what sort of monster he's unleashed by playing this game." "Oh, I think he knows exactly what he's doing," Cassie replied, her voice full of mischief. "And I think it's brilliant." With a curse, Ryan shut the door behind him with a resounding slam. Okay, so here, now we end up at the ball. And like I said, she's under an assumed name just so she can be kind of incognito. So, let's see. Okay. And she's kind of like me. She's just kind of a little clumsy and just not really sure of herself, just kind of awkward, especially, going to, stuff like this. Like I'm the person that would trip on her gown and have to be in the ladies' room. So anyway, so here we go. So I think it's a little awkward, but she does love bedeviling the hero, and Ryan deserves it. So the music began, and as feared, Athena faltered the first few movements, but no more than her drunk, bumbling companion, who had already run into the men on either side of him. He offered a rather loud apology for his clumsiness, drawing more than one irritated glare in his direction. Athena felt her anxiety increase as they parted to come together further down the line, but when she was to meet Sir Collins again, she felt her breath leave her lungs in a rush, for someone had taken his place. She hadn't laid eyes on Lord Rochford for over a week, ever since that shocking kiss in the parlor. But the memory of that towering frame, those broad shoulders, that rich black hair, and of course those strong masculine lips, had not diminished in the slightest. Even behind the half mask he wore, she recognized who he was, still just as devastatingly sinful as ever. Her lips twitched. Maybe he wouldn't recognize her right away, and she could have some fun with Miss Valor, I believe. That rich voice she had come to know as well as her own was far from cajoling and flirtatious, but rather hard and filled with a mocking sneer. Uh-oh. Instantly, the blood drained from her face. By the stiff way Ryan moved and the icy fury filling his blue eyes as they burned into her, it was apparent he was all too aware who she was, and he wasn't happy about the fact. With a sigh, she opened her mouth to try and explain anything to keep him from staring at her as though he might murder her where she stood. But when he merely lifted his censorious brow, she felt any further justification wither away as her own ire began to rise. What right did he have to be angry? Not only did both her employers allow her to come to this ball, encouraged her, but Lord Eversley had invited her, so what did she have to apologize for? She comported herself as well as any lady of the ton until that point. Besides, it wasn't as if she were the first commoner to ever attend a society party in secret. To be honest, Lord Rochford was the one who was out of line. Granted, he had as much, if not more, right to be present at this rout than she did, but that did not give him the authority to browbeat her when she was only trying to enjoy herself and do a gentleman a favor. If anything, he could learn a thing or two from Lord Eversley about proper comportment. Athena temporarily considered walking off the floor to leave Rockford standing there in the midst of all his peers, given the cut direct by his sister's governess. They would all whisper scandalously, "Wouldn't that just stick in his craw?" Prepared to do just that, her vengeful balloon deflated somewhat as the music ended and the orchestra began to strike up a waltz. Lord Rockford seemed to sense her intentions and hauled her into his arms before she could act upon the impulse. "Don't think that you're going to get away that easily," he growled in her ear. Athena was fuming. How Eversley ever thought this irritating man might hold any sort of tender for her was unfathomable. Rockford held her much more closely than was fashionably appropriate. Don't they all? And didn't seem to care as he spun her about the floor until she was lightheaded. She almost forgot that she couldn't dance until reality made a firm comeback. "What's wrong with you?" she demanded, grinding her teeth in annoyance. "I shall be the one asking questions," he returned tightly, his face mere inches from hers. She tried to ignore the way his hard body pressed intimately against hers. "I don't think you're in any position to be giving orders. What I do with my free time is my business. I've already thanked you for helping me gain the position at your sister's house, but I am not your property to command at will." "My, what a brazen tongue you've developed, Miss Valor," he sneered. "Could it be that Lord Eversley is responsible for this new boldness?" Lowering his voice, he grated, "How exactly was the carriage ride over here, my dear? Pleasurable enough for you?" Athena's mouth fell open in righteous indignation before a hot flush stole into her cheeks, the traitorous image of herself in Ryan's embrace flashing in her mind. "How dare you question my virtue?" she hissed. "Lord Eversley is twice the gentleman you are, you despicable cad. You would do well to take a lesson or two from him. I cannot believe that you are friends, as I have never met two men more different in conduct or character." And there you have it.
Thank you so much. I love your little asides too.
Yeah, well, that's just me. I like to put a little bit of humor in my stuff, and because
Absolutely. Yeah. And Kristen commented that she finds it refreshing you get inspiration from real life romance stories.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh, I love it. Anytime somebody, I'm like, "Oh, how did you meet? What was it like?" I want to hear all about it.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite tropes that you like to write or read?
Just like I made Athena, she kind of has like this secret identity going on in a way. I love it where it's like that, or like you have the dashing highwayman, but he's really an earl in disguise. I love that kind. I mean, it's catnip. I guess I just can't get enough of it. It's just awesome. Yeah.
Do you like writing it as much as you like reading it?
Oh, yes. Because I'm always thinking, oh, what kind of torture can I do to this guy? Or, how is this heroine going to grow? Because I'm like, a lot of my heroines, you'll find they're kind of shy or backward or wallflowers or something like that. But it's, they grow over the story because I'm like, okay, they start to come into themselves and learn who they are.
Yeah. And do you write primarily Regency, or do you dabble in other eras?
Oh, yeah, mostly Regency, but I've written Victorian. I wrote a Georgian era paranormal. I wrote a young adult fantasy. So I'm just kind of all over the place. I like to challenge myself. I don't want to box myself into one thing. I want to be like, and the Victorian era is neat because like I wrote a story, it was called Behind a Moonlit Veil. It was a Gothic story, and it was around the time of Jack the Ripper, which I always find that fascinating. So anything like, the macabre and just kind of just creepy or unusual, like there was a Regency dress that kind of has went around Facebook. It's kind of cool. It's made out of beetles' wings. And so I'm like, oh, that is so cool. And I wrote that, actually, I can't even remember which book it was now, but I kind of mentioned that in one of the stories too, because I just thought, oh, that is just so cool. That kind of stuff. I just love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you reading anything good right now?
I'm actually reading a J.R. Ward book, the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. Yeah. Yeah, I like that's about I don't read a lot of contemporary, but that I have to admit that series is spectacular. It's really awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, you mentioned you have a signed copy of your book to give away.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get our random number here. And the winner of Tabitha's book is Sherry Brown. So congratulations. I'm going to make a note here. And Sherry, I will follow up with you after the event to make sure that you connect and get the prize that you've won.
Yay.
And Tabitha, we have another question for you. When you're writing a book, which parts are easiest for you to write and which are most difficult?
I know a lot of people say that love scenes are hard to write. Oh, I think those are totally fun. And I've gone to so many. I've gone to some family, gatherings and stuff, and my cousins are like, "So is like your husband your inspiration?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, you can't give him all the credit. Some of it does come from our little imaginations here, but sometimes actually, like the beginning and the end, I'll know kind of like where it might be going. Like I'm a total pantser whenever it comes to writing. I don't have any storyboards or nothing fancy. I'm just like, okay, name, this is their eye color and stuff. And, I just kind of let the characters tell me their story, as crazy as that may sound. But sometimes in the middle, because, there's only so much you can do for a romance, and some romances progress quicker than others. And that's the same way, even in real life. So you're thinking, okay, what can I throw in there? What kind of problem can we have that can keep them together that sounds, plausible? And, it's not just like, well, I have a rip in my stocking. So, we can't talk to each other for 2 months, kind of thing. So, I mean, so sometimes that can be a little tricky. I might have to, take a break from it for a day or two and just kind of because sometimes, I mean, that's like with anything, I work in accounting at my day job, and sometimes, I'll just be looking at so many numbers. I'm just like, they all just run together. So I have to kind of get away from it. And then when I go back, I'm like, oh, well, it's right there. So, and that's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, right. You just got to like take a walk and not think so hard about it.
Right. Exactly.
Well, thank you, Tabitha, again for joining us tonight and sharing your writing.
I want to mention real quick, on my website, they have to make sure and put wix.com/romance.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got that wrong. Let me
that's right. It's kind of a lengthy one. Yeah.
Wixsite.com/romance. Yeah. I love, by the way, the graphic that you have on your homepage. That's like the carriage silhouette.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It's really dreamy.
Dark and moody. Yeah, I love dark and moody.
Yeah. Okay, so we have just a couple more things to cover tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Romancing the Gold Coast. And then we have 3 more raffle prizes. So I'm going to click some buttons again, and I'm going to share my screen. And so you can learn about Romancing the Gold Coast. Unfortunately, the organizer, Kim, who many people have mentioned, wasn't able to join us tonight. So I'm going to be sharing what I know about the conference, try to answer as much questions as I can. I'm just making sure that you can see my screen. Okay. So this is the inaugural Romancing the Gold Coast. Kim was inspired to organize this after meeting so many romance readers and authors at various romance conferences. She said she really wants to have a weekend dedicated to historical romance and celebrating the genre. And New York is a great place to have it because in terms of U.S. history, it's pretty rich, and there was a lot of literally rich people in New York, so there are some old mansions and whatnot. So the inaugural conference got pushed from 2020 because of the pandemic, so we've all been waiting a long time. And it is finally taking place this October, the 21st to the 24th in Glen Cove, New York. So the first goal is to really set the scene and make it feel like we are all stepping back in time. So that's going to be at the mansion at Glen Cove. Here are just a couple of pictures. Now, for those of you who don't know, Glen Cove is on Long Island, which is right outside of New York City. And it's basically in the part of New York that was the inspiration for Great Gatsby. So you can picture, a Great Gatsby-esque character building this house or living in this house. So there was a lot of wealth, and it still has this really beautiful old feel. Like I could totally see a Duke coming down those stairs. So I'm very excited to dress up and be part of that costume setting experience. The other goal of the weekend is to celebrate historical romance, and part of that is meeting authors. Like everyone has said, there are going to be a lot of authors there, and we also geek out about each other. We have something like 20 authors on this virtual series, and there are going to be 30 or more authors at the actual conference. So I've got some pictures here of Kim is the woman with the purple hair. So she's the organizer, and these are pictures of her meeting some of our authors at previous conferences. And you can see the one on the right, Victoria Vane, is a little bit of an inspiration for people being in costume in the mansion and really feeling like you are stepping back into the time. And in terms of what kind of activities you can expect, there are a couple of marquee events. There's going to be a high tea, and that's going to have a harpist accompanying the room. So I personally am really excited about that. I don't know if everyone else is. There's also going to be a fashion show to show some historical fashions. And there's going to be a formal ball where you can dress in Regency appropriate clothes or any period appropriate clothes, or you can just dress in contemporary but formal clothes. So those are going to be the marquee events, and they're all catered by the executive chef, who is an award-winning chef. And then there are also events throughout the weekend that celebrate the genre and help you kind of interact with some of the tropes that we love from historical romance. So there's going to be author speed dating, not for dating, but just to get to know authors, book signings, high tea, like I mentioned. There are also going to be workshops like historical crafts, masquerade mask making, Georgian era bingo, and Regency card sharps, where you can learn a little bit about those card games that we're always hearing about. So that is a little bit about the conference. The registration deadline is July 15th. So if you're thinking about it, think fast, book your tickets. In general, it's going to be my first in-person conference as a published author, and I'm just really looking forward to meeting readers, meeting authors, geeking out about this thing that we all love, and getting inspiration from everybody. So now we have just a few more raffle prizes to give away. So I'm going to bring Holly back because I forgot to do her raffle prize while she was with us earlier. Welcome, Holly.
Hello.
Do you want to tell a little bit about what you're raffling off?
I do. I read from The Bare Knuckle Groom. That's the second book in the Thompson series. And I'd be happy to send a signed copy of that book to whoever you choose for the prize winner.
All right. Well, I'm doing my random number generation now. And the winner is Doreen Coolidge. So congratulations.
Congratulations, Doreen.
And I will follow up to make sure that everyone gets their prizes.
Good.
Thank you, Holly. I also am raffling off an ebook bundle. My first series, The Countess Chronicles, is a 3 full book series, and then there's 1 short story that accompanies it. And I'm raffling off the entire series as 1 bundle. So who's going to be the lucky winner this time? We have Tia Faciane. So Tia, I will follow up with you. And then the final prize comes from Kim herself, the organizer of Romancing the Gold Coast. She's raffling off a custom mug that has Romancing the Gold Coast artwork on it. So you will be the first person to receive this mug ever. I think those of us who will be at the conference might be able to get one later, but for now, whoever wins this is going to be an exclusive owner of this mug. So I'm going to grab that random number. And the winner is Astrid Herrera. So thank you so much, Astrid. Congratulations to all the winners. We are doing this type of event for the next 4 weeks. Next week, June 16th, we have 4 authors. We have Nicole Locke, Kate Bateman, Heather McCullum, and Catherine Lynn Davis. And we're going to have more raffle prizes to give away, more readings, maybe more cat appearances. And we're so excited to celebrate historical romance with this virtual reading series, and even more to do the in-person event. Thank you everyone who joined us tonight. I hope to see you next week or in the following weeks. And thank you so much to Holly, Erica, and Tabetha again for such a great reading. I'll see you guys around.
Thanks so much. Good night.